Hello and good morning, everyone. And welcome back to Talking Business or hashtag Just Talking Business. And happy 2021. As many of you may know, that we are 19 days in. It's been a very eventful first 19 days. But we're back to talk about opportunities and information around business. We're going to start off the year doing a little something different this year. The gentleman that we're bringing on board, we've actually spoken to before, but I asked him to come back because we wanted to launch a 3-part series that really talks about business development. Today's show is going to be about the idea. You now have an idea. Now what? What questions should you be asking yourself as you move forward with this idea? Next Tuesday at 10 o'clock, we'll be back here talking about the inception or the product development. And then the following week, Tuesday, we will be here at 10 o'clock again talking about innovation, scale. So without further ado, let me introduce the young man that's going to give us a clue to all of that, Jermaine Jones. Hello, how are you?
Good morning, how are you doing?
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us from the Burdham Group.
Thank you for having me.
So I was picking at him right before this to say, for those of you who may not be in the Miami area, he just flaunting the weather in your face with the palm trees right behind him. That's him, not me, y'all. Send the messages to him. But thank you for agreeing to do this so much. So in the past shows that we've done, we're all around small business development and the pivot point. As many of you know, we are still in a pandemic. We started this pandemic, and we learned a lot about having to pivot during those months of businesses trying to figure out their emergency plan and not really having an emergency plan. But we thought we'd try something different at the beginning of the year and talk about, from the very beginning, your idea. If you want to start a business, what are some of the things that you need to be thinking about? And that will help us evolve into, what happens when you're in a pandemic and you have to pivot through the 3-part series. So today, again, is about the idea. We want to start with the questions outside of the ideas around your product. So I'll start with this. I'd asked the guest before, is everybody equipped to be an entrepreneur? That guest said no. So I'll start with that one with you too. Is every person, and can every human being with an idea be an entrepreneur?
Well, you posed that question to me before, and the answer is no. I think the entrepreneurs that exist that have failed will tell you, had they asked themselves several questions prior to going into business for themselves, they might have kept their job. Mm-hmm. So, the answer is no. Everyone's not meant to be an entrepreneur. I think if we explore what that really means and questions that folks should really ask themselves before going into business, it will provide some clarity to my answer of saying no, everyone's not cut out to be an entrepreneur.
So you and I talked a little bit before about sort of a checklist of things that we need to be looking at when we talk about when you look in yourself in the mirror and say, I am equipped to be an entrepreneur to bring this idea to fruition. So we're going to go through that today. And I hope for those of you that are paying attention and that are watching are able to kind of write this checklist down as well. And of course, reach out to us with questions along the way, because we really want to know what you want to know about entrepreneurship. I want to start with probably the one that's top of mind for all entrepreneurs when you start, in the middle, and at the end. Let's talk about the money. So you have a mindset that there should be, you need to be prepared to go out on your own and be an entrepreneur. Can you speak to that a little bit as to what you feel the strategy should be as an entrepreneur thinking about going out on their own?
Well, first, we all know that most businesses go under and out of business because they're undercapitalized, right? Mm-hmm. I think what most folks don't think about in the very beginning stages of starting a business or being an entrepreneur is the actual cost, right? So ideally, what you would want to do is you want to have at least 1 year of operating expenses saved, right? So the reason being is that if you have no customers the first year, the first month, the second month, the third month, you have enough money to at least try the ideal out, the business out for a year without it being detrimental to, your living situation, or without it being detrimental to um, your family. But most importantly, it doesn't, you don't, invest all this initial capital only to realize 6 months in that it's all a waste because you didn't properly plan. The second thing, in regards to like money, is to actually have your cost of living um, expenses saved up for at least a year,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, budget, because what that allows you to do is that allows for you to put all of your time into the business. Sometimes you have folks that are half, one foot into the business and one foot into a job that they're putting in 40 hours a week into, and it kind of slows the business growth down,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you can't, for longevity's sake, grow a business that way. So those are the two things: being property capitalized from the standpoint of having a year's expense saved,
Mm-hmm.
and really having your cost of living, you know, saved.
I would. I mean, most of us as entrepreneurs know what our cost of living is. I would probably say if you're going into business, you might want to size some of that down, or rethink how you really want to, what style of living you have until you can really get the business going. But what kind of operational costs do you recommend someone, um, take into consideration as they're looking at the money for the business that
Right.
year?
I would say you got to be extremely lean. I've
Mhm.
talked to business owners that have gotten grants from the city and the county, and at the very beginning of operations, they've hired this huge staff, right? They've gotten in the mind frame of, hey, I'm the boss. I don't want to be at the job every day. I want to hire these people to do this thing for me.
Mhm.
Midway through the year, when I've gone to visit them, they're in the business. All the employees are gone. They're cash strapped. They got a bunch of inventory. Operations are all screwed up, right? So
Mhm.
for me, it's about identifying a business that you can properly fund.
Mhm.
That's the
Mhm.
most important thing. And be realistic about it. You
Right.
can't say, hey, I'll start the business. I know the business is going to cost $100,000 to run. I got 25,000. I figure I can make the other 75,000. You know, as the business grows, it's kind of like building a car as you drive it, and that's just not smart in business.
Right. And dispel the myth that, I guess some business owners feel like if I build it, they will come. So by tomorrow I'll be a millionaire. Well, realistically, that's just not going to happen. So, generally, what is a legitimate time where a business is financially self-sustaining and at a point where they're making money? What has the research and data bear?
Number one, I think a business is at a point to where it's sustainable financially on its own when it can service its debt, right? Um, Oftentimes, when I talk to business owners, I explain the operating budget to them in conjunction with marketing and getting customers. So I
Mhm.
explained it to them like this and said, listen, you have an operating budget, you have $100,000. The operating expenses for the business will get deducted from that $100,000 operating budget, which means that it will shrink over time.
Mhm.
If you don't have the proper marketing in place or the proper um, investment source, the operating budget is going to soon deplete. Once the
Mhm.
operating budget depletes, the business will go under. So it really boils down to the business being able to um, offset the operating expenses with revenue coming in from the sales it gets from customers.
Right. If you have sales and customers during that year's time. I had a friend say one time, business owners sometimes borrow from family, friends, and fools. Uh, what is your opinion or theory on borrowing? Either through family and friendships, or a bank.
I think when you're dealing with family and friends, you need to take the same approach that the bank will take with you if you borrow from them, which is make sure everything is documented, make sure everybody has a clear understanding of the risk.
Mhm.
I mean, I think what oftentimes happens is when you have friends and family invest in your business, um, things aren't clear. They don't understand that it's a risk. They don't understand that, hey, you could, lose your money.
Right.
Um, they don't understand that, um, it's business is a risk.
Right.
We
Right.
could lose it all. You could giving me this money right now. It's like throwing it away, right?
Because there's no
No,
guarantee it's coming back.
right. And number two, I think from a business owner standpoint, when you take someone's money, you have to give them something in exchange,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
So I think what oftentimes happens is a lot of business owners take money from friends and family, don't get them any stock in the company. The bank doesn't give you a loan without some collateral material, right?
Absolutely.
So I
Absolutely.
think when you're dealing with friends and family, you're taking money from them. You need to give them some stock in the business, so they got some skin in the game. They have some ownership. Any event that this thing is a success, they're getting a return on their money. If it goes under, you know, they're accepting that risk too.
And how common is it for a bank to give a startup loan dollars?
Not likely, because the bank wants you to have the bank wants you to number one show that you're sustainable and viable. Number two, that you can service the debt. And number
Right.
three, you know what you're doing.
Okay.
And number
Okay.
four, the bank want collateral material just in the event that you don't know what you're doing, and they
Right.
need to sell whatever you have collateralized to get their loan, to get their
Right.
money back.
Right. Okay. So put this on your list, everybody. You need to have some money. That's the first thing you need. Second, let's talk about time and current responsibilities. Um, time. I mean, an entrepreneur's job is never done. So, on those days that somebody calls in sick, you've got to go in and make sure the floor is covered. You may work
Right.
7 times a week. What are some of the things that are going on in your life right now that does not permit you to be able to make that happen? So, if you could speak to a little bit about how someone should assess if their times and responsibilities will allow them and permit them the opportunity to be an entrepreneur.
Well, I think a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners that are thinking about going into business need to, number one, ask themselves, who am I responsible for? Am I responsible for the welfare of my nuclear family or my extended family? Because one thing for sure is when you start this business, um, you're going to have to decide where you're going to spend your time.
Mhm.
And if you have the welfare responsibility of a nuclear family or extended family, you're not going to have the time to put into the business because you have people depending on you,
Right.
especially if you're the breadwinner. If you're the breadwinner in your home and you're taking care of everything, the probability of you being a successful entrepreneur is slim to none, not because you don't have the abilities, because you don't have the time,
Right.
right?
Right. You
Um,
got to
the
go to
second
work.
thing, you got to go to work. You're the worker. You're the worker and the boss, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So the second thing would be the sacrifice of personal time and your social life. You know, I think a lot of folks think that when a person's an entrepreneur or the business owner, that they can have the liberty to do what they want to with their time. That's
Mhm.
not the case. Like your time is committed to, number one, keeping the business afloat. And when you're not spending time keeping the business afloat, you're spending time doing the business, whether that's making a product or doing the service. So your
That's
time is
random
it's
times
not your
throughout
own.
the day. You know,
Right,
there is no 9 to 5.
right, right. And the third thing is the ability to devote, full time needed to build the business, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So one of the biggest things the two things that you lose when being an entrepreneur and a business owner is sleep, right? You lose a lot of sleep, right? You lose the luxury of having holidays, right? You and I were talking prior to going, live with this production, and you say, "Well, how was your holiday?" And I was like, "What holiday?" Listen, from a time perspective, when you are a business owner and an entrepreneur, especially in the idea phase, you
Mhm.
have no holidays, you have
Right.
no weekends.
I
All
try
it,
to
it,
I try to every year I fool myself into trying to do stuff, but it never really works. I want my mornings to be about me working out and to be about me, pondering and meditating. And I generally wake up and have whip out my computer and start working. Like, this is crazy. Why? But it needs to be done. If I don't do it, I will not get it done. So much for the working out thing.
Yeah. So from that perspective, I try to do a morning ritual as well. What you end up doing is pushing your morning start time back, right?
Right.
So if you say, hey, I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock and I'm going to work out and then I'm going to start my day, right? But you wake up at 6 and you got emails from your client that's time sensitive. So you don't do the workout. So then you go back to readjust your plan and say, hey, okay, I'm going to get up at 4, and 4 o'clock might work. So now from 4 to 5, you can work out and do what it is you want to do for your personal self, because you know, 5 to 5:30, you're probably taking a shower, getting dressed, and then 6 o'clock is go time. Right. So,
exactly.
right. So, from a time perspective, the time is the business is your baby, and you've often heard people say, "Oh, this is my baby. This is my baby." Like, no, literally, the business is your baby.
It really
So
is.
you may, sometimes, if you got kids, you're gonna miss birthdays, you're gonna miss important things, but you have to ask yourself, are you willing to sacrifice that time and sacrifice memories with your family and sacrifice, having kids, having a family, going on vacations, having a spouse, just all of that.
What would you say are legitimate operational hours for a boss? Whereas some employees work from 9 to 5 or 10 to 4. A boss, how many hours might you put into a day, a week?
I would say on the day you probably put in about 15 hours, because in the beginning you don't have employees. You're the employee, right? So with you being an employee, you have to provide the product or service, right? You got to use that time to provide the product or service, right? And then at nighttime, you have to handle the admin stuff and the business growth things that keeps the business afloat, so that the next day you still got a product and service that you need to provide.
And that taps on a little something as well. This idea of a title of boss. A lot of people aspire to do that and be that, and that's great. But there are times you're going to have to get beyond your title and recognize that you could be the janitor on some days. You will be sweeping, you will be cleaning, you will be doing a lot of stuff that you had not expected to do. So you can't get caught up in the title as well. There's definitely some some other stuff you need to think of as well. There's a mindset that you may have to get past. So we've gone through time and current responsibilities. So there's money, time, and current responsibilities. So add that to your checklist, everybody, which takes us to, which we talked just a little bit about earlier, risk. Who's the person? Who's the person? Yeah, tell us a variety of risks that you think someone needs to really have a real, like I like to say, coming to Jesus with themselves about when they're talking about entrepreneurship.
I think from a risk standpoint, the number one thing you have to ask yourself, right? You've heard people say sometimes, I want to risk it all, but literally, literally, if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner and you're going into this line of work for yourself, you really have to ask yourself, am I truly willing to risk it all, right? And some of you will say, well, yeah, if we, when I've talked to, I've done seminars where I've talked to a room full of business owners, say, hey, are you guys willing to risk it all? They're like, yeah, right? So I say to them, well, before you guys go so hard for saying yes, let me elaborate to you guys what that really means sometimes, right? So risking it all sometimes means being homeless, right? You put everything that you've had into this business to where if it goes under, you lose everything, right? Bankruptcy, is a big part of risk taking.
Right.
Divorce, right? If you're married, divorce,
right? Right.
An estranged relationship, a strained relationship with your kids if you have them, right? Because you can miss their childhood, you can miss important things to them. Right. you can actually be at an event for them, but be on your phone taking care of business. So it's, being present with the body, but absent in the mind.
Right.
You know,
Right.
Friendships, especially if you have friends that have put money into the business and you've promised these returns and all these great things,
And it
right?
didn't happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Didn't work out.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have to really get yourself in the mind frame of you could lose everything, and if you're not open, go ahead. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Go ahead.
If you're not open to losing everything, you might need to keep your day job.
I have
It's
a friend who said she was thinking about opening a business, and she was like, but I just need to make sure that I can get, that I'm guaranteed to get that every 2 week check I'm used to. And I was like, well, then you need to stay where you at. You are, because you might not even get a check for the first 2 months. Never mind,
right,
or sporadically over the first 2 to 3 years. So you.
right,
So that those are, if you don't think that you're ready to not get a paycheck because you're the last on the list of all the bills that need to be paid,
right. You
that's
need to, you need to stay on the porch. You need to
right.
stay right on the porch. Don't do it. So
And
I tell folks from a risk standpoint. I said, okay, so what I mean by, you got to consider the risk of your family, all right? So think about it this way: would you take your child to the zoo, right, and put their head in the mouth of a hungry lion, right? They're like, no, who could do that? Okay, that's risk, extremely risky, right? Yeah. So you do know that you could, your relationship, you could lose your family to this business if it goes south, right?
absolutely.
I say now let's take the deeds to your house, your car, all of your possessions of monetary value. Let's go to Vegas, right? We're gonna play one hand of blackjack, right?
That's
But we're gonna
literally
bet.
what you're doing.
Yeah, we're gonna play one hand. We're gonna play one hand of blackjack, but we're gonna literally put everything that you bought, the house, the cars, the jewelry, whatever you have a monetary value, your retirement, your pension. We're gonna put it all on the table. We're gonna play one hand. Would you play? Would you play? Would you tell the dealer the deal?
Exactly. Paola said, so true. So I'm getting the feeling that you've been through that. You've had to ask yourselves that question. So yeah. Those are, and so talk a little bit about, if you would. I know when I started this business concept, I was told that generally you really won't start to reap the benefits for 3 years if you're able to stay in business for 3 years.
Right.
I
True.
think, let's say if you even get that far.
Right.
I recently heard it's now 3 to 5. So, if you could speak to a little bit about why. I mean, what is it that makes that so?
Okay. So to build a business is extremely hard, right? So to build a brand, to get customers at a level that makes the business sustainable is hard, right? Because you're 9 times out of 10, you're not the only person selling what you're selling, right? You're not the only person providing the service that you're providing, right?
Right.
There are other players in the marketplace, right? So there are other players, and then you also got to figure out what segment you fit into. Because if there are 100 players, all 100 players don't fit into the same segment.
Right.
For example, if we sold Italian food, right? We got Olive Garden. We have Piquet de Boot, which is up in Broward. We have all these Italian restaurant businesses, right?
Right.
So if I opened up my place, Italy to go, I have to first figure out, what segment I fit into.
Right.
If I foolishly think that my competitor is Olive Garden, right, it's going to take me probably a year or two to realize that it's not.
Right.
So I've lost time, and I've lost money, right? Because you can have a business plan, and a business plan act as like a roadmap. It's not for certain things will work out exactly how the business plan said it would.
Right.
So along the way, you're tweaking different things, you're changing things, you're messing with pricing, you're tweaking marketing, you're messing with products, you're changing up services. So it takes you a while to get the right combination of things that works for your business and for your target market that works in your segment.
Mhm.
So it takes, 3 to 5 years to get in the black because you're spending a lot of money doing those things.
Right.
Which is why, the first thing we talked about, money is important, and which is, the number one thing. Because like we said at the top of this, you know, um, most businesses go under because they're undercapitalized.
Well, we have Paola, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this. You, who just shared, she's been 1 year without a paycheck. What would you advise her to do? Like, what should she be thinking about right now as to how to ultimately transition her business so that she is able to get something of some kind?
Well, that's kind of like a blanket question. There are many more questions that I would have to ask her to answer that question
Okay.
competently.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. So at risk.
I want to, I want to, no, no, I want to, I think really, in my opinion, I think risk should have come probably before money, right? On our list, right? Because if you're not willing to put your baby's head in the mouth of a lion,
Then you're not ready for even to talk about the money.
right? We're not even talking about the money, right? so, so, so this is the thing. When I just want to, when I tell folks that you will have to sacrifice, right?
Mhm.
When you take risks, um, and there's a cost with risk that a lot of entrepreneurs don't see or don't consider, but realize after going into business.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I want to stress the family aspect of it, because if you talk to a lot of business owners, and you talk to a lot of successful business owners, and you talk to their family had to make an adjustment,
Right. Right.
um, and there was some tense times doing those adjustments.
Mhm.
Um, and there's still a lot of hurt and pain that still there with a lot of those successful entrepreneurs, because once
Okay.
your kid turns 18 and you missed all their childhood because you're building this business, they're not really caring about the fact that you paid their college tuition, or they live in this nice house, or when you die they inherit all this wealth
Mhm.
because you missed all that time,
But
growing up.
what about, so I remember a couple of years ago I attended, I understand because I don't want to tell my age. AARP is now really incentivizing folks over 50 to get into investing because they are the empty nesters. They've gotten the babes
Right.
out of the house. They're about to retire. So what about that individual who's a little bit older, a little bit settled, the family's going in a different direction? Uh, are those still some of the risks you're looking at, or are there some other questions you need to be asking yourself? I don't have to
No,
worry about babies, but now what?
no. If you're at that point, you can risk it all, baby. You can risk it all, because what's the worst that can happen? You
Okay.
die owing somebody.
Yeah, yeah. So now your family owes it for sure because they're coming after them. And
Yeah.
your 401k,
So
your
yeah,
401k.
so yeah, but you can risk it all, because I mean at that age, because heck, you're 50. God promised man 70 years, right? You got
Mhm.
about 20, right? So gamble it, do it. That's what I would say if you're at that point. But what I will say, because my sister um, is an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
and what I will say is this: if you got kids
Mhm.
and you're thinking about leaving your job, right, and going into business for yourself, what I would say is spend the years that your kid is progressing through school planning your business, right?
Okay.
Planning the activation of your business, and wait until your child is in their second year of college, or they're out of your house if they don't decide to go to school, to um, wait like wait like 2 years after your
Mhm.
child is either doing their sophomore year in college, or your child has been out your house for 2 years, um,
Because they're starting to
to
pursue their
really,
own life.
right, to activate your plan, because
Right.
what oftentimes happens is if you start a business while your kid is in um, school, the time that they need from you from a developmental standpoint will get sacrificed.
Right.
They
Exactly.
will get sacrificed. And I'm kind of experiencing that now with my sister. And when she was going through the process, I was, explaining that to her, like, hey, you should wait till, my niece um, graduates high school and get into like her second year before you up and leave your job.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're an entrepreneur and business owner and you leave your job, you're basically saying, when I eat, the entire house eat.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's not necessarily true if you got folks dependent on you. So
Exactly.
that's extremely risky, you know, because you can eat ramen noodles or whatever, and you know, you know, take the path of the rigmarole of entrepreneurship, but your family might not have signed up for that.
Yeah. That's so. Paola does have a question for you. Actually, we'll
Sure.
probably talk about it a little bit later, but I did want to throw it out. Would you kindly share advice on how or when is the right time to start hiring?
I would say I would say number one is two things, right? Um, I would say it's kind of a difficult question because it all depends on the business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to give. I like to give strategic and complete and competent answers.
Mm-hmm.
So it really all depends on the business type and how well the business is doing and where the market is going. These are all the things because currently right now I'm working with clients and we're in that phase of whether do we hire some people or do we um, lay some people off. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a complex question to answer because there are so many moving parts that determine whether or not you hire somebody.
Okay.
Whether where you at financially, where the market is going, um, your growth strategy. If you're looking to add additional products and services. So those are things. Those are all the things that play a part in the decision to hire someone or not. So I
I
would I
also
would
would
need to.
I would also say I have a friend that we've been talking a little bit about as you talk about are you ready to hire, are you ready to lay some folks off is now we're looking at income. It, in addition to hiring, what type of employee you're hiring, which if you were looking for somebody that can really develop what you're looking for or get to you what you're looking for, you're probably going to look at people who have a skill set. You have to pay for them. So are you willing to hire
Yes.
three people versus four, but those three can deliver what you're looking for because they have the skill to do it in a very efficient and effective manner? Those are some questions I think you also need to consider as well when you're looking at hiring.
Yeah, but I think what oftentimes happens when folks look at a hire folks is like, okay, hey, what do you want this person to do? Well, I don't really know. They haven't really they haven't really made like a scope of work. Like, okay, if I hire this person, I want this person to do this. And even after making the scope of work, how does that scope of work tie into the overall business strategy and day-to-day operations?
Right. Right. Can that person deliver that? And or is that essentially a waste of your money because you're not meeting what your real needs are? So
Yeah, but even with that though, because currently right now, like to not go off on a tangent, but um, even price point of pay structure strategy wise, like do I
mhm.
pay this person a salary or do I performance based or do I do a mix of a salary and if a person says, hey, my desired salary is 120,000 and the position that you have the person working, kind of the market kind of dictate that, right? But
Right.
when you consider the current economic environment, it's like, well, that's risky from a business standpoint to pay out, someone $120,000. So you may do a mix. You may do a mixed compensation package where you say, hey, okay, you know what? I'll give you a base of 100, and I'll give you a commission on, you know, money you
Mhm.
save the company in your role, or money you've generated for the company in your role. I'll give you a commission of that, and it may take you above
The
120,
120.
what you're seeking. But it kind of tapers off the risk from an economic standpoint for the business owner.
And that's definitely stuff we're going to delve into a little bit further next week during Inception.
Right.
That was kind of tough.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we have so far money, time, current responsibility, risk taker. Four, temperament. Um, Tell me what you mean about temperament.
So, as a business owner, man, if any of you guys know business owners, you're like, man, you guys are always stressed, right? You guys are always worrying. You guys are always just antsy and fidgety. So one of the biggest things with being a business owner is, having a temperament. And we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, where we talked about the business owner or entrepreneur being the worker and the boss. And what that means is one part of the job is providing a product or service, right? The other part of the job, concurrently, while you're providing a product or service, is fulfilling the administrative and support staff roles, which requires the business to operate. So what does that mean? Let's say we had a bakery, right? So as the business owner, entrepreneur, guess who's the baker? You. You got a customer that comes in. Guess who's the cashier? You. You got a delivery that comes. Guess you got to get there in the morning for the delivery to be the stock clerk receiver. You, right?
Who's got to clean up before you go?
You. Bathroom backs up. You're the plumber.
Right.
So a lot of folks, when they think about being business owner, they think past this stage and think, oh, I'll hire somebody to do that. I'll hire somebody to do this, right? That sounds good in theory, but when you start looking at your financials, it gets real, right? So then you have to ask yourself, hey, do I have the temperament to be, the custodian, the HR, admin, assistant, the cook, the handyman, right? The stock receiving clerk. Do I have the temperament to do all these roles initially? It's kind of like when folks say, hey, I want to open up a restaurant. And you say, okay, if you really want to see if you got the temperament for opening up a restaurant, get in there and cook every day.
Right.
People that enjoy cooking are more times than not the folks that say, hey, I want to open up a restaurant.
Right. But that's a different thing from cooking in your kitchen for your family and cooking for, what could be 300 meals a day on a soft day.
Right. So, so folks are like, I really enjoy cooking. Why do you really enjoy cooking? Because it's so relaxing. I can cut my music on. I can drink my wine. I can do this. I can do that. That's great. That's awesome. In your kitchen. When you get into a brick and mortar and you're in a restaurant, you're not playing your music, right? You're not drinking your wine. You got pissed off customers because the orders are screwed up, right? You got to manage staff. You have to make sure that you got to OSHA. You got to make sure the city comes out. You got all these folks that you have to appease. Just to make real cheap sandwiches.
Right, so you're not overselling or underselling,
Yeah, and this is stuff that you didn't have to do when you was in your kitchen cooking, drinking wine, listening to Sade.
Right. And if you overcook there, you can just put it in the refrigerator and warm it up tomorrow. You might not be able to do that necessarily in a restaurant.
It's kind of like if you overcook a piece of salmon, right? You can throw it away. What happens when you overcook, 2 tons, a lot of salmon, right? And you have a ton of people in the lobby waiting, right? In the dining area waiting for this overcooked, right? Problem. So it's about having a temperament. Can you deal with process, people's pain point, and the business side of this thing? And a lot of folks don't ask themselves this question and realize this. A lot of folks don't initially ask themselves this question before they start the business, but find themselves asking themselves these questions once they
with a tragedy.
Yeah.
I have no salmon. What am I supposed to do?
A lot of folks start asking these questions when it's too late.
And I actually also, I shared with you earlier, I had a friend that started a hair salon in a partnership, and they just hadn't had the right conversation. So I will throw out, if you're also looking at a partnership, this is where temperament also is really understanding who you're partners with. Because, they would do hair all day, and then one of the partners would just leave at the end of the day, where there's paperwork that needs to be done at the end of the day. Do you just assume that's the person that's going to do it, or should there be a conversation around it? And who's got the better temperament skill to accomplish all
Yeah,
those administrative things? Or do you think you're just going to be, the one that comes in, does the work, go home and collect the same amount of pay? So, those are areas where you need to look at that as well.
I think I think one of the most important when we talk about temperament, one of the most important things that one need to maybe ask themselves, right, or think about is you're you're the business owner,
Mhm,
but in actuality, you work for the customer,
mhm.
and sometimes customers can be rude, disrespectful, can really, um, get out of pocket, right?
Mhm. But
You
you still
have to
have to
have the
smile.
yeah, you have to have the temperament to smile, and the customer can be dead wrong, right? And if you're not the type of person that can manage, you know, those type of situations, um, going into business is definitely not the thing for you to do.
Right, right. And just also to go back to, thinking of like a partnership, and I'm not in a partnership, but I am intrigued by that dynamic. The woman who started Soul Cycle with her partners say that they periodically go to a psychologist because they've got to, they've got issues and they've got to figure out their stuff outside of Soul Cycle. They've got to work through emotionally. So, that's where temperament also plays a factor because like you said, you work for the customer. The customer's always right, or you have a partner, or your employees. You've got to make sure they're getting paid. So that can be pressure. And how are you managing all that in a way that's
Right,
graceful and productive and
respectful.
helpful? So, okay, so we did money, time, or current responsibilities, risk, how much risk you can take, temperament, and the last under, are you ready to be a business owner? And I hope you all are writing this down. Skill set and knowledge, which in my mind is huge, and I'll tell you why. I've experienced situations where people kind of jump into a business without really knowing what type of business they're jumping into, and just because it seems like it's something I could do. I mean, do you advise that? I mean, and you've never done it in your life, kind of like me trying to start a restaurant. I cook. I don't like to cook. That might not be the best idea for me. So, would that be well advised?
So, I think when I'm looking at this question, this is probably the most comical and interesting question out of all the questions, because I've had times where I've went into businesses, and the very first thing I do is I ask a lot of questions as to why certain things were done,
Mhm.
and then my next question is, who advised you to do these things, and why did it make sense, right? Why did what this person said to you make sense? And some of the answers you get is like, wow, like really, like the classic um, response for small business owners and entrepreneurs that are deep in trouble is when I say, hey, um, what made you do this? Oh, my brother went to school. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, he's the only one in our family that graduated high school, so I thought that he had the most knowledge. So I said, is your brother a certified public accountant? Is your brother have work in finance? No, no, no. But he cut grass. He the lawn man. You
Okay.
know. So I think the most important things that entrepreneur business owners should ask themselves when it comes to skill set and knowledge, right? I think they should have the ability to know what they don't know. I think that is the most important thing. When you know what you don't know, that allows for you to go get the help. That allows for you to really address your deficit. But a lot of business owners don't know what they don't know until it's too late.
But
And
I
thought
think
they knew.
sometimes that's linked to money, though. So, and I'll give you an example of actually a guest we had on the show who talked about you know, unfortunately, she had to close her business. And one of the things she said, what she learned was if she had to do it all over again, she would have done just that. She would have gotten a lawyer, she would have gotten an accountant, she would have gotten all the people with the expertise that she needed. But a lot of that was connected to I've got $20 in my pocket, and what's going to be the best use of those $20? Well, especially when you think that a lawyer is probably, you know, very expensive. You know, how do you get beyond the mindset of that? What, 235 an hour might save you $10,000 down the road? How do you move people past that?
Fundamental question, right? Always ask business owners, hey, would you spend $10,000 to save $100,000? They're like, yeah, who wouldn't? I said, most folks that answer that question, they're answering that question in hindsight,
Right, right,
right?
absolutely. That's true. That's
Right.
true.
They're answering that question in hindsight. So when I talk to business owners, say, hey, you could pay this fee to save your entire company.
Right.
You know, I'll say, how much did you invest in the company? Oh, I have $100,000 into the business, right? So you don't think it's worth spending $5,000 to save $100,000?
Right, right,
And for the most part, a lot of them say, well, you know what? I never looked at it like that, right?
right.
For other folks, it goes back to the very first thing we mentioned, money. You know, when they planned the business out, they didn't have it properly capitalized. They didn't, in the original budget, they didn't know what they didn't know, right? So they
So you
didn't
know to put
they
money in
didn't budget.
for it. Yeah,
They didn't budget for the things they didn't know. They didn't budget for the professional service costs, right?
that's true.
Because they didn't know what they didn't know,
That's true.
which kind of baffles me at times because if you are a baker, right, you know there's a higher probability you know nothing about accounting.
Right.
You know nothing really in depthly about strategy, about
By the way, I'm
finance.
sorry if you hear the hammering going on upstairs. I
That's
apologize.
fine. That's fine. So there's a higher probability you don't know what you need to know to effectively develop a pricing strategy, to effectively to analyze your inventory, to
Right.
effectively analyze, um, you know, the product cost, the cost of goods and services.
Hmm.
You don't know that, right? You've never done a contract. You've never done a lease. You don't really know what triple net lease entails.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know, you lived in an apartment before, and when something breaks, you call maintenance. You may
Right.
think that, hey, because most folks say, well, I've had my own apartment before, so having a commercial space is,
Different.
I know. No, no, they don't know that. They think it's like having an apartment. So when something breaks the very first time, right? So when something breaks the very first time, they call the landlord, and the landlord hangs up on them and say, hey, you signed a triple net lease. That's your problem.
Right, right, right. Exactly. That's exactly what she said. You know, there were all these
Yeah,
things happening in this building as is, and so now they're stuck with this situation where they have roofing problems. Like,
of
who
course.
repair roofing problems when you got a business going on? So I
That's
do
true.
apologize. See, I need to afford a studio, but I'm working out of my home because I can't afford that. So I apologize. So yeah, but that's where, research is very important. Because you're right. A business owner who doesn't know what they don't know, especially if they're getting into an industry they don't know anything about. And I know that happens a lot with service industries. I talk to my friends all the time in the area of marketing and public relations. Just because you got kind of a large social media following, now I feel like I'm a PR executive. But have you
Right.
really done the research to find out what that entails, and what are all the components that are, and do you have the skill for that? Do you have the network for that? Or are you having to build that, and are you doing the education and honing your skills?
Right.
um, then you really are able to put together a budget that looks at the things you really need.
Yeah, but even with that though, even from the very beginning, most folks will say, I've talked to folks that say, hey, I'm going to call you when I need you, right? I'm going to call. I'm not ready yet. And I often say to them, have you started spending money in the business? They're like, yeah. I say, you're going to call me and there's a higher probability we're going to have to tear down everything that you've put money and time into because it wasn't built the right way, right? You don't go get the consultant after you've built a jacked up business.
Right.
You get the consultant to strategically help you put it together, so you don't get to this point to where you need money for professional services and it was never allocated for the budget.
Right.
Right. So the other thing is, paying for professional services that outside your wheelhouse. I'm a baker. I'm going to pay for all these other services that have nothing to do with baking bread.
So, but here's another thing I would say. You and I have talked about. I've taken a billion workshops, like just a billion, and I'm about to throw you under the bus a little bit here.
Go ahead, do it.
No shame on doing free services because I've partaken of them and I've learned some stuff. So I won't say that I haven't.
Right.
But I will also say there have been some workshops that even as a new small business owner, I've been kind of like, are you sure that's right? Like, are you?
Right. No, you're right.
And that's because, folks have been able to get money to be able to give give workshops. But I would also say one of the challenges is there's been a hole, I guess, in that education space for those people who are considered mid-level or scaling. So you kind of go to workshops that kind of give you repetitive information that you can really kind of get yourself. So, I mean, again, I think a lot of people are relying on, let's go the free route. But how do you know the difference that the free route and I probably should go to somebody who's going to give me a little bit more specialized?
So I would say this to you: when you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, right?
I mean,
so listen.
Get no advice from you.
No, so listen. So we've all lived long enough, and we've all practiced consumerism enough to know when you get stuff for free or you pay cheaply for things, it's not the best product or service.
Right.
So when you go to a free conference, you get what you paid for, right? You paid nothing, then you get nothing, right? I mean, that's really that is really what happens at a lot of these conferences, and it's funny that you say that because you and I often talking. I'm not upset that of what you said about these workshops because I agree with you.
I don't know what I'm talking about, but I kind of think you don't either.
Yeah, so that is something that I'm currently in the process of working with some agencies to change.
Okay.
As we speak. No, good. I agree with you, but I just want to throw it out there. When you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. So all of you folks out there that are going to these free workshops, you get what you pay for. You pay nothing.
Let me say that. Let me backtrack a little bit. Some of them are good, but some of them you're like, no, this is it. I might need to seek some higher.
Right. But it really all depends on what you need as a business owner. What stage you at. If you are in the idea stage, it might work. If you are in the inception stage where you are in business and you're starting to develop and get traction, it might not work. And definitely, if you are innovative, it's probably not going to work. If you're looking at scale, it's not working.
That stuff. You're way beyond that.
Right. So you're way past that. So a great majority of the folks that come to those workshops still got a 9 to 5.
And they're in that stage where they're starting from. You need a business plan. You need you need to incorporate. You need to. You've got to have marketing. Those types of fundamental things that have not been enacted yet.
Yes. Yeah. That's where they're at. So you're right. So
okay. So we have talked about, once again, if you are thinking about being a business owner, you need to check on your money, time, current responsibilities, risk, which actually Jermaine has suggested you think of that first, temperament, and skill set and knowledge. Now, let's talk about the idea. The next question we're supposed to be talking about today is your business idea viable in the marketplace? I think you and I talked a little bit about, it was a period of time, folks are going out starting bookstores, but without having done the research or seeing where the future of books is going.
Right.
So, yeah, talk to us about how do you do that research? How do you know where to look to see what's the future of this industry and if this is going to work in this marketplace?
Well, most entrepreneurs, small business owners, start a business based on a need that was unmet for them,
Hmm.
right? For example, if you live in the urban core and you're into health, you're like, man, you know what? There's no Whole Foods here. There's no health food store here. There's no place I can buy organic, fresh product, right?
Hmm.
So you may say, you know what? There's a need for that here in this community because I know that I'm not the only person that may need, organic food and products.
Hmm.
So, in that space, like, is there an unmet need? Yes, right? So that's just the first phase of it, like to see if there's unmet need, right? So even if there's unmet need, you then may ask yourself, well, if there's an unmet need, why hasn't anyone, you
Feel that.
know,
Hmm.
feel that need?
Hmm.
Which leads you to, which should lead you to the next train of thought. Let me explore, you know, who's doing it, right? And once you explore who's doing it, then you may say, well, oh, you know, that um that piece of my thought, has been confirmed. Like there is a need, right? So the second part of that needs to be right. The most important part, right, is is this viable business, right?
Hmm.
Viable in the location that I'm thinking about putting it in or
Hmm.
providing it in, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because if you often talk to folks, they'll say, "Man, you know what? I got this idea. I want to do this thing and then to make a lot of money." And he's like, okay, yeah, it will, but where are you talking about doing it? Well, I'm thinking about opening it up over here, right? Let's just use some real examples. So, our banking services needed. Yes, we all know that for profit banks make money off DDA accounts. And
Hmm.
DDA accounts are direct deposit accounts. When a person puts their money in the bank loans the money out on the backside.
Hmm.
So, but the money needs to be on the bank's deposit for the bank to do that, right? So, do we need banking services? Yes, everyone knows that banking services are needed everywhere, right?
Right.
So, the next question is the marketplace that we're thinking about putting in this bank, will it be viable there from an operational standpoint?
Hmm.
The answer may be no, right? So, let's say if we took a for profit bank, Bank of America, would a Bank of America services be needed in the urban core? Yes, right? Banking services are needed.
Hmm.
But from a business standpoint, would it be viable in the urban core? The
And what?
answer would be no. The answer would be no.
Hmm.
The reason the answer would be no is because, for the most part, in the urban core, from a financial and banking standpoint, a lot of that target market uses the bank services just to cash their checks,
Right.
not to deposit their check in a checking account.
Hmm.
So if you're just using the bank service to cash a check, a for-profit bank won't make any money because they
Right.
make money with products and services. But if the money's not staying in the bank
Hmm.
from a deposit standpoint, or if CDs aren't getting bought from a deposit standpoint, or if maintenance fees, if there are no accounts with money in them to maintenance to get
Hmm.
that $15 a month, the bank is not making any money. So they won't open up a for-profit Bank of America in the urban core. So what will open up? Check cashing store,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because a check cashing store is a place for folks to cash their check and to get money orders, right?
Right.
So that type of business fits that type of market. So when you
Right.
have when you have the concept of, is the business viable? Yes. Is there a need? Yes. Then it's location. Does the location with the business creates a viable enough business to generate enough revenue to keep the business afloat?
I would also say that, and you might want to also look at using your example, the products and services that are offered. I know I live in the urban core, and there was a conversation about bringing a bank to town. And to your point, will there be people making deposits? We did get the bank, and people are making deposits, but products like business loans, mortgages, that kind of stuff, they don't offer. You can't go to that bank and look for that, because realistically, people aren't getting a lot of mortgages where we are, or able to secure a business loan. So, you know, there may be a place for you to put, if you're looking at a particular location, to offer some services, but
Right.
not your full on, services. I think I told you about a friend who is a doula and wanted to deliver babies naturally in the urban core. That's not your audience. That's not it.
Yeah.
So she had to kind of size it down to just education of, maternity and what you should be doing while you're carrying your baby, because that's not the audience that's going to do that kind of thing. So,
And that's one of the most important things. I think a lot of folks don't do that analysis, and they say, "Hey, there's an unmet need. I'm going to open up this business here." Right.
mhm.
Um, and I told you the example when we spoke off camera about the lady that took her pension and
Yeah.
opened up a sub shop back in the day across the street from the college. She assumed that she could make a lot of money because the college students would leave the campus and come to her sub shop. What she failed to realize is that on campus at the college they had a food hall where kids could go eat, and if kids did leave the campus to eat, she was right next door to a McDonald's,
hmm
right?
hmm
So it's kind of hard to compete, especially if you're targeting college students. It's kind of hard to compete with a dollar menu as exquisite as McDonald's to cash-strapped college students.
That's probably as exquisite as you can afford to get.
Right. So, if you're a college student leaving the campus and you have $4, you can have a feast at McDonald's. At this particular sub shop, it got you nothing.
Okay. Okay.
You know,
So how long did
so
that business last though? Just uh,
7 months,
really?
7
Okay.
months. You
And
know, um,
yeah, that's not
but
right.
it, but and it could have been viable somewhere else that just wasn't the proper location. Food is
So then what would you have advised her to do? Okay, this might not be your best location, because we all hear it: location, location, location. Again, I think a lot of people think location. Two things come to mind: one, can I afford it? And two, am I emotionally attached to this particular place and space? Or three, I've just made up in my head that because college students across the street, they're gonna come running to me. What would be, as a business owner listening now, what would you advise someone do? Okay, yes, you've got this location in mind, but how do you vet looking at other things,
well,
other
in this particular case, I would have looked at the industry and might have told her this is not the industry you want to go into
uh-huh.
because it's
Okay.
capital intensive. It's super capital intensive,
Mhm.
um, and you're competing with McDonald's and all the restaurants that are on campus,
Right,
right?
right.
So it's two things, right? So folks pick location because of traffic. It kind of decreases marketing per se because you can benefit from secondarily from all the other businesses that are around the location and all the
Mhm.
traffic that passes through the location.
Mhm.
But you pay for that with location costs,
Right,
right?
right.
The
Absolutely.
other side of that is you can pick a location where you don't really have all this traffic, but you got to spend a lot of money marketing to get the traffic to your location. So
Mhm.
it's really trying to figure out which would be cheaper, you know.
Okay. Mhm. So, and then, I've told you before, one of my workshops, I was told you're probably going to look for an industry where, like you said, there's a void, or there's a niche missing in the market, which is a good in theory, I guess.
Right.
I go back to once you think you've got that niche, that little niche. Now, what? What should I be looking at to validate that I'm
If
on
you
the
have that niche,
yeah? Like I've discovered that I can create this widget that's going to save our lives in this particular arena. What how am I looking at how it would differentiate myself? Is this a realistic thing, or I'm just making up stuff in my head? Or, can I Google it and see if there's a miss?
well, the big determining factor is revenue. Are you making any money?
Yep.
And at what rate are you making money? You look at your burn rate, right? If your burn rate is at a certain percentage and your cash inflow is at a different percentage, if you're spending 3 times more than you bringing in, or 4 times more than you bringing in, 5 times more than you bringing in, you need to. It's not working.
Okay. Okay.
And this
Well,
is kind of like why you need to have enough money, put up to operate the business for a year. So in the interim of going through this year, you can tweak certain things and try certain things, and it doesn't really fluctuate, the expense of what you're doing.
so okay. So that was a mouthful, y'all. I think we learned a lot there. And we're going to invite everyone to please come back next week, because next week we're talking about inception. We made it past the idea. We've asked all the right questions. And I'm going to give y'all a little homework over the next week to ask yourself a lot of these questions, so you might be able to come back with, some inquiries. But once you have the idea, now inception, where's product development, looking at staff, what do you need to bring in operationally? So that's going to be next Tuesday at 10 a.m. again, right here. We hope there will be no more hammering. We'll make sure there's no more hammering. And I really want to thank you, Jermaine. We ran a little bit over, but I thought the information was definitely helpful, and I hope it was helpful for those of you that tuned in. Thank you so much, Jermaine. I think this has really made me go back and look at some stuff I've been thinking about. So I will see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye bye. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us for the 3-part series. Again, we hope this has been helpful, and we want to help you on your strategic plan, your vision board, to get you ready to start your business and get going. Few housekeeping announcements. We are really trying to get Talking Business on the map. And we really want to get more people engaged, because we hope that we're sharing information that really helps those of you who want to start a business, or in the middle of starting a business and trying to scale. So we will create our own landing page where you can go back and listen to some of the YouTube videos we've done before, or see some of the YouTube videos we've done before of our past guests, as well as the audio. We just, if you want to use that as a tool of education, some people from different industries are there to kind of share with you what they've done, what they've been doing, how they're still surviving and thriving in the industry. We have a Facebook group. We really want to encourage you to tune into Talking Biz, or hashtag Just Talking Business, joining the Facebook group. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what's going on with your business. Maybe we can help. We can guide you to the right people. We definitely want to be able to do that. And if we can't, we'll try to figure it out along the way. And we definitely want to make sure, and I forgot to ask Jermaine to tell us how to get in touch with him. So we're going to put that in the Facebook, and we're definitely going to get him to start that conversation next time around. And then the last announcement is, stay tuned. We're going to be doing some accountability groups in Clubhouse. We really want to help each other, make sure we're hitting our marks, we're hitting our strategies. So tune in next week, 10 o'clock, and more with Jermaine, and it's going to be wonderful, and it's definitely going to be a great opportunity to learn, and for me too. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week, everybody.